Good to see everyone. You know, when it comes to love, I think that we can clearly say that we are a society, we are a culture that is in love with love. And I don't know if you ever thought of it that way, but we see clothes, everything's love. We see, we can go to Barnes & Noble, and there's a great number of books written on love, and not just those trashy romance thingies. I'm talking about self-help books on how to love and how to be loved and how to be lovable and how to find love. And we've all been to chick flicks, and we wouldn't go as a man. We wouldn't go to see the movie unless we was with the one we love, and we love to see those chick flicks with our love of our lives, and we go see those things, and that certain special someone. We're in love with love. And I think in school too, of course all of us had that past, but we go for education, but I've seen too many times in people that I know that, you need to send your daughter to Freed because maybe they'll meet this nice preacher's boy or elder's boy. You know what I mean? And before long, they're married and back out of school and raising a family, and their hubby preaches or however that goes. I've seen that happen a lot. There might be an underlying motive for going to a Christian school. I don't know. Sometimes I think, though, it is an idol that takes over our lives. And one form of that is the God of romance. The God of romance. Romantic love is the noblest pursuit, I think, sometimes in our culture. And we believe that from an early age that we deserve this God of romance. And we began, we want that, we long for that tingly, bubbly feeling, falling in love. And all of us that have some age on us, we probably did that. We probably know what that's like. And those that haven't happened to, we want that. And we find ourselves looking for our soulmate, our love, because after all, this society and culture that we live in, it's culturally induced. Everywhere we go, we're raised to believe that there's only one person for us, and we need to find that person, and we're going to find that person. We're going to be running through a field of daisies or up on top of the Empire State Building, and we're just going to find it. That romantic love is out there. We're so into romance, and if you're older and single, you can't be happy. You can't be happy now if you're single. There's something wrong with you. We've induced that. I brought a big smile. I wasn't going to say anything about that, Brock. And a smile threw me off. But someone's never found love. She's out there, Brock. That's what they tell us. All right. And if you don't think that, here's some of the titles from a store that sells Christian material. I'll put it that way. 12 smart choices for finding the right guy. Date or soulmate. How to be found by the man you have been looking for. If singleness is the gift, what's the return policy? And I like this one. It says, if men are like buses, how do I catch one? Now that's the truth. Those are true titles that are out there. They're out there, and we're in love with the idea of romance and love, marriage. And falling in love is important, and it's this endless pursuit of love. Now, I want you to turn to Genesis chapter 29. This is the first episode of The Bachelor. And you never thought of it this way, but I want you to notice, here's Jacob the bachelor. Now, he's going to go to a relative named Laban, and what he does there, he finds the love of his life. Genesis chapter 29. Let's read verse 16. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Well, he was in love. He didn't know a thing about her. Nothing, except that she was beautiful and that he loved her. Jeannie's back too early, a day early, but she must have been a looker. Think about that. I mean, I'm ready. I'll work 7 years. Now, I've known people that are very beautiful people, but after 7 minutes, I can't stand to be in the same room with them. So sort of he might have been taking the chance, I look at that and I think, well, that's pretty cool. But 7 years I'll work, and I just think that's pretty crazy. But if you think about it, that's very romantic. That's a romantic story. It's pretty wild. And she's sitting there. What do you think Rachel's reaction is? Man, he must really like me. He must really think that he must love me. So the story goes on, and he works for 7 years. And then one of the most romantic passages in the entire Bible, verse 20. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because he loved her. What a romantic passage. Isn't that romantic? This guy worked 7 years, and it just flew by. It was just like a week, a few days, because, what was it? He loved her. Romantic love. He was in love with Rachel. There was no doubt about it. So the way things worked was the dad threw a big feast, and late at night the man would go in when it was dark and into the tent and be joined with his wife the wedding night. So what happens? Verse 22. Laban gathered all the men at the place and made a feast. That's what he was doing. Now in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went in to her, and Laban also gave him his maid. And so it came about in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. Wow. Wasn't Rachel, it was Leah. And you look at that, he woke up expecting Rachel. Jacob woke up expecting Rachel, but he'd married her sister. Well, notice what he continues to say. What's this? He says to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served with you? Why then have you deceived me? Wow, what deception. What a deal that was. Well, he makes another deal. 7 years. Listen, 7 years. 14 years is how long he worked for Rachel and the love of his life. Now, I don't feel sorry for Jacob in this story. Actually, the person that I feel sorry for is Leah. Jacob got what he wanted. Leah is the one that I feel sorry for, because you know what? All Leah wanted to do was for Jacob to love her and to pay attention to her and to give her some attention. And she would do anything to win over her husband, but it didn't work. And I feel sorry for Leah. You remember that story, the movie Jerry Maguire? Show me the money, since we were talking about money this morning. Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise, and Renee Zellweger. They were in that movie, and that was a chick flick. And one of the things about that was, after Tom Cruise had that famous line, every woman that was in that movie theater that seen that just wished that their better half would have come up with that line before Tom Cruise's tear-filled eye look at her and says, "You complete me." Oh, what a line that was. What a line. Have you noticed that there's been no Jerry Maguire 2? Do you know why? Because it had been a story about a divorce between Tom Boy and Renee. You know why? Because nobody, no person can complete you. No person that walks on the face of this earth is going to complete you like that chick flick would lead you to believe. Story in Genesis 29 is about that. It's about that, and I want you to notice verse 32. Leah conceived, bore a son, named him Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. I bore a son. Look at the name. Surely now Jacob's going to love me. Then she conceived again, bore a son. And she said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved by Jacob, he has therefore given me this son also. His name's Simon. Well, verse 34, she conceived again, bore a son. And now, this time my husband will become attached to me. He'll love me because I've borne him 3 sons. His name's going to be Levi. Verse 35, she conceived again and bore a son. This time I will praise the Lord. Give up. Finally, Leah seen the writing on the wall. Jacob was not going to complete her. In fact, that's what she's. I'm just going to let the Lord complete me. The relationship that I long for, what I need in my life to be all right. It doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter how many children this guy's not going to love me. My completeness is found in the Lord. I want you to know that. Young people, old people, all people, if you're going to be in love with this idea of love, and you go to Kroger's and the young ladies get bombarded, and men don't even notice those magazines, those 800-page wedding magazines that's got all the pictures. I see girls looking at it all the time, young girls, and they're dreaming about that day that they'll be complete, that Romeo will come and romance him. And that's what's going on. You start thinking about finding Mr. Right one day, all that love that you're going to have, all that's going to come your way, Mr. Right will not complete you. Mrs. Right won't complete you. Only God will complete you. That's the story here. That's this story. Only Almighty God. Acceptance of His love and a relationship with Him. Now, romance comes, that's good and fine. It's great. It's great. Romantic love is great, but in the end, it doesn't matter. Why? Because God completes you. But the problem is, sometimes men, sometimes women, we don't look for that, but it's that idol of romance. That's the idol. Well, don't chase after the empty God of romance, because I'll tell you what, it won't fulfill you. It just won't. Only the God Almighty that's in heaven, He will. Well, love, God of romance. How about family? How about family? We love our family, don't we? Yes, we do. We love our families. You better believe we love our families. Turn back to Genesis chapter 22. And this story really asks a better question for us. What if I was asked, me personally, to prove my commitment to God, that it was the greatest love that I had? To prove the commitment to God, and really that the love of God was greater than my love for my family. Abraham is one of the most crucial, critical characters in the Old Testament, well, in the Bible, in the Scriptures. Abraham's there. Genesis chapter 12, let's go back over there. Let's look at this promise. We don't read this enough. Let's look at verse 1. Genesis 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abraham, go forth from your country, from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land that I'm going to show you. I'll make you a great nation. I'm going to bless you, make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. I'll curse the ones that will curse you. And you, he says, and in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Now the problem was, Abraham had no seed. Abraham was getting old. He'd been promised an heir. He'd been promised great things about his family and the heirship in his family. But who builds a nation and saves the world with barren people? It just doesn't work. All right? Abraham recognizes that. Well, finally, Isaac comes along. That's where we're at in Genesis 22. We're not going to talk about Ishmael tonight. But Abraham is to offer his son as a burnt offering. What? Why? Now, wait a minute. Think about what God had promised here. You promised me a nation and a land that all the people in the world is going to be blessed. You promised me this family, and now you want to take my only son and you want me to sacrifice him. Well, what do you think about? I look at that. There's not a single parent in here, I don't think, that can read this story and not be touched. When you read that, we're going to read it in just a second. Take your only son. Sacrifice your only son. And you look at that. We adore our children. We adore our family, our grandchildren. They're a blessing from God. They're a heritage from God. And who among us would not fight to the death for our children? We love our family that much. And I think even the most frustrating moments in our lives, we love them that much. They need to know that. But he goes up and he packs his stuff. He gets the wood. He packs all this stuff. The fire, he gets the fire. He gets the servants, the donkeys, his son. He heads to Moriah. All right. Let's pick that up where Shane left off. Verse 4, chapter 22. On the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, you stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and he laid it on Isaac, his son, and he took his hand, the fire and the knife. So the two of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb of the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the two of them, they continued to walk together. they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar and there arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac, and he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand, took his knife to slay his son. We're familiar with that story, but I want you to have in mind this mental picture. Mount Moriah, the wood's laid out, the fire is there, and you know, they're walking up. They're getting ready to do that. Dad, where's the lamb? Dad, where's the lamb that we're going to slay, Dad? Here's what you need to know. Abraham was going to do it. Abraham was going to do this. He was going to take a knife and gut his own son. He was going to sacrifice his son. Abraham, no matter what explanation of Abraham's words or how you might interpret this to mean different things, but the rest of the story is the fact that Abraham was going to sacrifice his son. He was. Here's the question. If that were you, would you do it? Would you do it? Would you even pack the wood? Would you even sharpen that knife? Would you even go on the journey? 3 days? I have to tell you, I don't know that a lot of us would. I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because when it comes to this conflict that we have with God versus our family, I'll tell you what we do. We choose family for a whole lot less demanding things when it comes to our service to God. All of us. Whole lot less. We choose family over God. We won't obey the gospel because our parents believe something different. We won't change our minds because of what the truth is because of family. We won't sell our family short. We're going to put our family above what the truth is. There's a gazillion ways that we put our families before God. We're not going to get up for AM Bible study because our kids were in something last night and they need to rest, and we're going to let them rest. There's a lot of things that we do. Take a knife to your kid? You kidding me? Think about what we do when it just comes to general things. We've got the idol of family all over us. We'll put family even before God. What an idol. You ever think of your family being an idol? Have you ever thought about being lost because of your family and the idol that you put before God? Family is God for us. Here's the rest of that story. You know, over 1,000 years later in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, David buys a piece of property. And his son Solomon builds a temple on that place. And you know, over 1,000 years later, God sacrificed his son right there. Right there. That's the story of that. And Paul talks about that. The reality of all this is it's so prophetic. It's how it's intended to be. We're supposed to see what Abraham did. And we're supposed to see what God did. We're supposed to recognize that. And we have to serve God before our family. That's the bottom line. That's the lesson. But they're our idol. Nothing comes before our family, does it? Does it? Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. Notice what he says, verse 34. He says this. The Lord says, do not think that I come to bring peace on this earth. I didn't come to bring peace. A sword, he says. For I come to set a man against his father, his daughter against her mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be, he says, the members of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves a son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take up his cross and follow after me, he's not worthy of me. Now what am I saying? You know, you can fill in the blank whoever you want there. Uncle, aunt, cousin, you can fill the blank in right there. Am I saying that you need to take your wife out this evening, tomorrow, nice romantic candlelight dinner, and you look at her and you whisper, as you look into her eyes, you whisper, honey, you're no longer my number one. I don't think that's going to fly. You know, what I'm saying is that your wife or your husband should already know that they're not number one in your life. They should already recognize who is number one in your life and who you're going to put first in your life, because the idol of family doesn't exist with you. Listen to this quote. The supreme acts of family love is set. The supreme acts of family love is to set your heart on Christ. Doing that leads to the most loving family relationships possible. Maybe what we ought to say is, I love you too much to make you the center of my life. I like that. You know what that means? You know what? In other words, what that's saying is that Jesus is the Lord of your life. And Jesus is your life. And when Jesus is your life, do you know you're the best husband that you can possibly be? You know when Jesus is your life, that you're the best father that you can be? Did you know that? The best wife, the best mother. When Jesus is first in your life, that's what that means. When I let Jesus rule in my life, I'm at my best. I'm at my best. In other words, I need to do spiritually in my life what Abraham was willing to do physically. I'm going to have to be willing to do that. Recognize that. I've got to be willing to risk it all to serve God, and that means your family. How many folks will be lost because of family? Oh, the Lord's not going to condemn me for that. You need to read Matthew 10. You need to take a good look at it. Well, every sermon has 3 points. That's what they told me in. I didn't get to go to preacher school. I've kicked romance. I've kicked weddings, family, love. What's next? How about you? How about the idol of you? You in love with you? You first? You number one? Some of the symptoms of that is, first of those, there's a line of arrogance when you're number one. Do you know that? If you're first, there's a line of arrogance. When I love me, I'm arrogant because I'm always right. I'm always right. My way's the only way. I don't listen to anyone else. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how they say it. It doesn't matter how right they are. I'm right. All right? I'm in love with me. Also, there's insecurity in there. That's a symptom of serving self. You're insecure about a lot of things because you're consumed by what everybody else thinks. There's a level of insecurity there. Don't have enough time to go there. How about defensiveness? Yeah, you're pretty defensive. If you're number one, you're defensive about everything. You're on the edge a lot. Someone that's consumed with self, I find that they're mostly always on the defense. They're protecting their perfect self. And when you've made, I think, yourself a God, you have to be perfect. You have to go for those highest compliments, and you long for that. You have to always be right. You have to always be in the lead. You have to always win every argument. You're in love with yourself. The idol of self. You know, I'll tell you one of the biggest problems of loving yourself, you know what the result of that is? Loneliness. You're alone. It's lonely to serve the God of me because you can't handle anyone else around you. And you have no friends because they're always weary of you, because you're always the center of attention and you're always right. You find yourself alone. And you're always there. You're always right. Ezekiel. Let's turn to the prophet Ezekiel. This might help us. Ezekiel chapter 28. Look what he says in verse 1. The word, he says, of the Lord came again to me, saying, Son of man, say to the leader, he says, of Tyre, thus says the Lord God, because your heart is lifted up, and you have said, I am a God. I sit in the seat of gods, in the heart of the seas, yet you are a man, and you're not God, although you make your heart like the heart of a God. You put yourself on God's throne, he judges you for that. And think about your situations, life, school, home, work, church. I don't like this, I don't like that, I wish they'd do this. I want what I want. You know, we've been talking about idols for the last Sunday and this Sunday. And doing battle with those things. We've been preaching about that. But you know what? We should just call it doing battle with ourselves. Because everything that we've been talking about is actually just a battle with you. Me. That's where the battle actually lies. I want it to be all about me. Prophet Jeremiah, chapter 2. I want us to notice what he says. Let's think about being selfish. Let's think about everything being about us. I just want you to see a moment for this passage. Jeremiah chapter 2, look at verse 9. Jeremiah says, therefore I will contend with you, declares the Lord. He says, and from the coastlands of Kittim and sea, and send Kedar and observe closely and see if there has been such a thing as this. Has a nation changed gods when they were not gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Be appalled, O heavens, at this, and shudder. Be very desolate, declares the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water. He says, I'll stop there. But I'm looking at that. Living waters, bubbling waters, life-giving waters, waters of your salvation. And you look at that because that holds a lot of fresh, good water, a cistern does. I think I don't have to explain what a cistern is, but you know the problem with cisterns? You know what happens to them? They crack. They break. And when they crack and break, they always do that. The water comes out, pollutants come in. All right, that's the problem with a cistern. And that's what he's talking about. And what he says is, you've replaced me with other gods. You replaced me with gods that have no value. The cisterns that are broken, they have no value. And you're looking at that, you've given up the living water. Who is that? God says it's me. What have you gave him up for? A broken, a stagnant, empty cistern. Now, those in Jeremiah's day would understand that imagery. They would recognize that. They knew what that was. They would understand the foolishness of somebody working, digging a ditch, getting that water to run off the roof, run wherever it could, to a cistern that was broken, cracked. How foolish that is. And we're laboring like that. For what? That's his point. And I think that's what we do. Instead of looking to God for comfort, instead of looking for God for comfort, what do? We look for comfort in food. And we look for comfort in entertainment. That's an idol we've talked about. Instead of looking to God for a source of significance in our life, what do? We look to God, or we look to our careers, what we're doing in our life, what we're amassing in this world. That gives us significance. We do that. Instead of looking for God for security, we count our money. And we look at our portfolios and we look at how much we've laid back. That's what we do. And instead of looking for God as a source of joy in our life every day, we look for our children. And we look to our families for that joy every day. Instead of looking for God as a source of hope that we have, well, we look at the politicians. We look at our government and the country for that hope. Instead of looking for God for a source of truth, what do? We look for popular opinion. All of those things, every one of those things. What I'm saying to you, friends, is because we think we're so great and we know all the answers and this is how you do it, broken cisterns and all the pollutants that are out there that we think are so vital. Can you understand the imagery? Did you see the imagery that he's talking about? Stop trusting in broken cisterns. Stop. John chapter 4. Jesus talks to a woman at a well. Let's look at it. He asks her for a drink. He says that she know what water's there. Verse 11. Wanted a drink in verse 10. She said to him, Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Verse 13. Jesus said to her, Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him shall never thirst. But the water that I will give him will become in him a well of water springing up to eternal life. Jesus Christ is the living water. All the other gods that you may have in your life, that you may serve in your life, that are self-made gods, all those gods, power, love, accomplishments, achievements, work, money, all of those idols, all of those gods are broken. They're all broken cisterns. Don't be foolish. This is the living water. Put God first. That's what these things have been about. Jesus said, He that believes and is baptized shall be saved. The gospel is the same tonight as it was this morning. If you've never done that, you're just as lost right now as you were this morning. We would encourage you to come to obey the gospel of Christ, to put on Christ, to drink of the living water. words of your salvation tonight. Please come as together we stand and sing.